And we're back. Today we'll be going over the 2024 Research Bureau Ships Guide to World of Warships. So let's hop on to it. We're going to be going over all of the Research Bureau ships, including the favorited PAOLO EMILIO. So let's hop on to it. If you guys don't know, it takes how many tech tree line ships? Is it 3 tech tree line completed, or is it 3 or 5 to get Research Bureau activated? 3 or 5?
It will take 5.
Okay, so it takes 5 tech tree lines to completed for you to be able to get access to the Research Bureau. And at that point, you're going to be able to get access to all of these goody ships. So let's hop onto it. So the first ship on this list is going to be the SLAVA, which is a lot of the sniper enjoyers in this match favorite this ship. Would you like to talk about the SLAVA?
So, SLAVA is by far the most accurate battleship in World of Warships. No questions asked. She has one of the fastest shells in the game. Also super accurate. So if you want to put 8 or 9 shells into a ship at 23 kilometers, that's your ship. However, there are some big trade-offs. So she has 25mm bow and ends. So even though she has about 96,000 HP or so, she is not very tanky. And also, those guns are still 406s, so they will not overmatch 30mm of armor, which is important when fighting cruisers. They will still do well against anything lower tier, but once you get fighting tier 10, tier 11 angled cruisers, she's going to have some issues. Her reload's also on the slower end, so you have to make sure every shot counts. But that being said, she's probably one of the best ships at punishing broadsides. If you even show a hint of broadside, you're gonna get a shell. Her shells are going to go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Although, one last thing to keep in mind, her shells are extremely fast, and while this is usually a good thing, this can work against her if they literally overpenetrate the ship.
Yep, that is true, because at close distances, you are more likely just to overpen things just because of how fast the shells are.
Mm-hmm. She's pretty good for sniping, but unfortunately, not much else for a battleship. So she's generally seen as like mediocre because of that. She is fun for sniping people, but you have to be mindful of her other drawbacks.
Yep. Moving on, let's talk about the Gibraltar. Yeah.
Gibraltar is generally considered the weakest option in the Research Bureau. She is a heavy cruiser with smoke, but her high smoke fire penalty and poor gun angles will sometimes make that very awkward to use. Her guns though hit quite hard, and these are the same short fuse guns, short fuse shells that the British light cruisers have. So if you see a destroyer and she lands like 9 or 10 shots onto it, that destroyer is effectively out of the game.
Yeah, Gibraltar is my least favorite Research Bureau ship in the game. I hate it. It's more of like, what were the developers thinking with the ship? It's like, it's a heavy cruiser with a smoke, but its concealment fire is pretty much as bad as its actual concealment.
Her
But
gun angles are also quite bad. The rear ones, at least.
yes.
If you're bow into the enemy, they're actually quite good. But for kiting, they are complete garbage.
And look at that. Look at that rear. That aft is so sittable. If you're kiting away and not careful, you will get sit up the bum very easily.
Hmm. She has potential, but she's very painful to use. So unless you want a challenge, I just take a better ship than the Gibraltar.
Moving on, let's talk about the SEVASTOPOL. The SEVASTOPOL did get a recent change to how its heal works, but overall, I still find the SEVASTOPOL be kind of a mediocre research bureau ship, but what are your thoughts on it?
She's a pretty funny. She's a pretty funny ship. She has 6 15-inch guns, and she's a very fast ship. But her gimmick is the unique repair party. It's a normal repair party, heals at the normal rate, but it lasts for much longer than normal. It used to have a longer cooldown, but Wargaming buffed it so it's pretty much the same as any other cruiser. So, when used properly, she will tank for quite a while, but but her main guns don't actually have that much firepower. They will punish broadside cruisers and broadside battleships, but against destroyers, GG. Like, no, seriously, GG. You only have 6 guns. You don't do much damage to them. So, if you ever have to fight a destroyer, just go ahead and cry in a corner.
Yeah, go cry in a corner. Maybe go to the gulag as well. You know, fun stuff.
At
Mo-
least your Hydro will protect against torps.
Yep, all the hydro. Moving on, let's talk about the Colbert, the legendary
Uh,
Colbert.
aka the ship that was literally made for John the Ruthless.
Yep, pretty
So,
much.
Colbert is the ultimate definition of glass cannon. She has the absolute highest DPM in the entire game among all ships. And, and she's also very maneuverable with her speed boost and fairly respectable turning radius. The problem is you have to be careful. Her citadel's a bit high, and if you do not play it properly, you will get dev struck. Also, her gun arcs, like, they have amazing DPN, but the gun arcs are pretty bad. They're literally destroyer guns. So you have to stay fairly close in order to get the max damage out of your guns. And that is where skill comes in, because not only do you have to dodge, you need to also aim your guns and be mindful of any potential crossfire. She is by far the hardest ship to play in World of Warships, but also has the highest payoff if you could manage it. Just look at how John plays the ship.
Yep, it is definitely one of the highest skill caps in the game for sure. So definitely not for the weak of heart.
hmm If you want a very high payoff ship and you're willing to learn, if you're willing to play one of the hardest ships in the game and learn it, then Colbert is perfect. If you just want an easier time, just play something else.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about the Vampire 2. I personally love the Vampire 2 for that crawling smoke. A lot of time I will, if I ever play Vampire, it's whenever I'm in a div and I'll use the crawling smoke to smoke in a battleship or a cruiser with radar to get a lot of those really hilarious memes where you have this a vampire smoking in a Schlieffen, where the Schlieffen suckers are just going off and the enemy can't spot it because of the crawling smoke from the vampire. Vampire with its hydro makes it a very strong tier 10 DD. One of the top research bureau ships for sure.
As a standalone destroyer, it is still a very good ship. You have even more firepower than Daring. You have 5 kilometer Hydro, which gives it very useful anti-ship capabilities in certain caps. And you also have a speed boost, so you actually can run around fairly quickly. But the problem is she only gets 1 torpedo rack, so if you have to torpedo enemy ships, good luck with that. Her smoke her smoke is a double-edged sword. They will let you move around for a bit, but once you can move around in smoke and it lasts for a while, but you cannot turn off the smoke once it's active. So if you fat finger it or you put it in the wrong spot, well, now the enemy know where you're going for 2 minutes straight.
Yep, exactly. Another downside is its depth charges. It has one of the dumbest firing depth charges in the game, where they shoot off at the side to the right instead of off at the rear or the front. It shares the same depth charges as the super ship Minotaur. I forgot the Edgar. It shares the same dish as the Edgar. So yeah, those depth charges are absolute garbage. So good luck trying to hit anything with those depth charges.
Hmm.
Moving on, I'll let you talk about the Von SPEIJK.
Ron Spake.
So
So the Von Spake is. I wanted to say. I'll say Von Spank from now on. So Von Spank is a typical Dutch cruiser. Well, it's a typical cruiser that has an airstrike capability. So compared to the Dutch cruisers, the guns are a lot more accurate. You can think of her as a tier 9 version of the Harlem. So she gets normal cruiser accuracy. She gets the same level of protection as the Harlem, and but she still retains the fast heal. Her airstrike, while strong, she only gets one long-range airstrike compared to the Johann de Witt.
yeah, I've never
So
understood that. That to me, I never understood it because it only gets one. That's so painful.
she's meant to be a normalized version of the Dutch cruiser. So while Dutch cruisers rely more on their airstrikes, this thing can be played as a typical cruiser and have no problem. And the airstrike is just kind of a nice bonus. Whereas the Johann and the Golden Lu will rely a little bit more on their airstrikes and lose some gun accuracy as a result.
Yep.
Overall, not that interesting of a ship to play, but hey, it's if you want to play a Dutch cruiser for whatever reason, and you can just play her.
All right,
She's not a Yeah, she's not a bad ship by any means, just not very interesting.
let's talk about the Hector. The Hector.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Hector has the funniest turret setup I've ever seen. Just look at the 4-gun setup in the front.
It's got his DPM in the front. Look at it.
Mm-hmm. So Hector is a Commonwealth cruiser, so she is a very awkward ship to use, to say the least. She has like destroyer level guns that forces her to get pretty close due to how lofty there is. Her DPM is fine, but again, they are more of a close range ship, so she has to get close to use them effectively. For that, she gets, I believe it's crawling smoke.
Yeah, she is crawling smoke, yes.
Hmm. But at the same time, the crawling smoke, A, you can't, someone has to spot for you, and B, you have to constantly you have to constantly crawl away in smoke to get the most use out of it. People will try to torp you in smoke, and if you have to dart out of the smoke, Hector's armor is kind of a disaster, to put it
Yeah,
mildly.
it's got no armor. Very little armor.
And of course, if you run into a radar ship, if you run into 12-kilometer or 8, 10-kilometer radar, that's also going to be painful for you. I think she also gets normal acceleration, so she will also feel kind of
This is high
kind
ship
of
acceleration.
poor. She gets improved
Yeah,
acceleration?
that's what it says.
Huh. Okay, I'll take that back then. She gets some close range torpedoes, but honestly, she just doesn't feel very fun to play. It's nice if you can get the most out of your smoke, but overall, she doesn't really justify with how difficult she's to play.
Mhm.
So just go get something else.
All right. So we have those ships. And let's go into the next ship is the Ohio. I think everybody knows at this point what the Ohio is, but I'll let SAT score explain.
Hmm? Always has been. So Ohio is generally considered the best research bureau ship in the game, and that is for good reason. She combines the best traits of many U.S. battleships, and then mounts the 18-inch guns on top of that. There, she's very accurate thanks to her 6 slot. The 18-inch guns, I don't need to sell you on how good they are. She has pretty solid secondaries, so once she gets into range, she can help burn. They will complement her guns by burning people down that stay in range. She also gets Montana Hull, which is pretty solid survivability, and she also has Fast Repair Party. The Fast Repair Party will heal. The cooldown is half compared to standard ships. So she is a jack of all trades ship that does well in just about any situation. Literally, the only bad thing I think of is two things. One, she's fairly slow for a battleship at 28 knots, and B, her battleship shells are actually on the slow end. Funny enough. Let me double check to make sure though.
Yeah, it's the American heavy shells. They're pretty slow. They're heavy AP. They're pretty slow.
Nothing that you can't overcome, though. They're just battleship slow, but not like, oh my god, North Carolina, they're stuck in the air all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you can aim the Montana shells, then Ohio shells would be no problem to you.
Yep, exactly. Moving on, let's talk about the Sicilia. Sicilia is, I think, the newest edition for Research Bureau. Yeah, it is. The Sicilia is the newest Research Bureau addition to World of Warships. So, what do you think of the Sicilia?
Cecilia is a interesting side grade of the Colombo. I mean, Colombo isn't exactly lauded, but she did get buffed. Cecilia is um, she's a she trades SAP for HE in her shells, but her gimmick is supposed to be the SAP secondaries, which is kind of odd to say the least. They'll have amazing firepower, but the range isn't very good, and you have to get close anyways to get use out of them. They hit hard in theory, but at the same time, the secondary accuracy is of normal battleship accuracy. So you can't. She still has smoke, so if you can get close, you can use her. You can absolutely shred people with secondaries. Is that she kind of has a somewhat awkward play style because of that.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Now, let's talk
Mhm.
about the Druid. So, the Druid is it's pretty much a bigger cousin, AP only cousin to the Druid. No, sorry, Druid, the Daring. It has pretty much two Minotaur turrets on the front, and that's pretty much it. There are no torpedoes. The anti-air on it isn't the best either. It does have rear going off depth charges, which is pretty nice. It has a 3 kilometer hydro that's pretty typical for the British DDs. It also has the British acceleration, so the ships are going to be slow, but they have a high acceleration. But those guns can absolutely devastate cruisers, battleships, and destroyers alike. Because we already know how strong Minotaur guns are, but putting that on a destroyer platform is very, very strong. But the problem is, though, these those turrets have almost no armor. So a lot of the time, ships will try to aim at those guns. Like they don't even try to aim at it. They'll just hit the ship and they hit the guns and those guns get knocked out. So you have to build into preventing those guns from getting knocked out, or you're just not going to have any DPM at all in a match, which is the major downside of the ship.
Mhm. Druid is probably the most hilarious destroyer to play, though, because of your all forward firing armament. You literally just spin and tank everything. And if you need to go dark, just use your Royal Navy smoke. You also have Hydra, so you also should rarely get torpedoed. So your entire purpose is to literally run at the enemy destroyer, laugh as they have to turn away while you keep pressing W at them, and then literally run them down because you have all forward facing guns and they probably have one or two in the back.
The Druid is one of the only, I think it's legit, one of the only destroyers in the game. I think it's like one on one destroyer fights, the druid's gonna win almost every time. Just from the fact those AP shells arm every time on
Mhm.
any destroyer, which means it's doing like 3 or 4K salvos every time it shoots. And that adds up fast. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you're a Ragnar, a Kaba, it doesn't matter what you are. The shells are going to arm and they're going to do massive amount of damage. And the thing is, once you're bow into a druid, you you have to commit to it because if you try turning out even more damage, so you have to sit bow in. And as you are sitting there bowing, either reversing or just Wing at him, he's still going to shoot you and do a ton of damage. And you're also able to Citadel light cruisers, um, close distance. There's literally a clip where I farmed a full health Mosfa from I think it was like 6 or 7 kilometers away. Just got Citadels and killed it. Full health to nothing in about 25 seconds, 20 seconds. It does a massive amount of damage. It just destroys.
Hmm. It does have somewhat high concealment, so if you want a standard destroyer, just go take the Vampire 2. If you want the funniest gunship possible, then yeah, Druid is a good pick.
Yep. All right, so we got 3 research bureau ships left. Um, let's talk about the Illinois. Pretty much the battleship cousin to the Des Moines.
So Illinois is a battleship, but is actually a cruiser. She has Des Moines, not quite Des Moines guns. They fire at 9 seconds reload, which is a bit slower, but you get 12 of them, and more importantly, you get the Iowa A hull, which is very very tanky by cruiser standards. So with this, you will DPM down other ships no problem, and have much better survivability than a typical cruiser. If anything turns broadside to you, you simply just start shredding them with AP. If they remain angled, you can use your excellent HE damage to farm them to death. There is a few problems though. Your main guns are not very durable, so you have to invest a lot into keeping them alive. And also, she has improved battlecruiser accuracy, but she's still not as accurate as cruisers. So your DPM is still a little bit less than a Buffalo. But overall, she is well worth it because she's pretty durable and has very respectable cruiser level of firepower. And once you get close, you will absolutely shred anything broadside. So very fun ship. And one of my recommended ships if you want to get a tier 9.
Yep, for sure. Moving on, we have the Siegfried. Is Siegfried still the most accurate cruiser in the game? Does it still have that mark as the most accurate?
Yep, same as a Sevastopol.
Okay.
So Siegfried is a complete opposite of Iowa. Iowa is a battleship hull with cruiser guns. Siegfried is a cruiser hull with battleship guns. Those battleship guns are very, very potent. They're the same as Bismarck, but they have literally cruiser accuracy, so they should citadel quite often, at least against broadside ships. The hull itself is pretty durable, unless you show broadside and get citadeled in the rear. But by cruiser standards, this is quite good. Overall, and it's also pretty maneuverable and has German hydro. It's a solid ship overall. It's a very solid ship overall, but you do have to be careful about the low barrel count, because against destroyers, it's the same problem as Sevastopol. GG, you won't do too much damage to destroyers.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about the The last and the most memey ship on the list, the PAOLO EMILIO. The tier 9 yellowing machine. If somebody said, hold my beer, I think this would be the ship.
Hmm. So, as Bo has demonstrated multiple times on his stream, this Paul Emilio is designed for one purpose only. You see a ship, you press speed boost, you hit the smoke button, you watch your speed go up to past 60 knots, you show up on the ship at 2 kilometers, and then dump 8 nuclear torpedoes into its broadside for a death strike. And then, if you're lucky, you get to rinse and repeat against another unfortunate enemy.
Yep.
And no other destroyer is capable of this. Apollo Miller is completely unique in this regard, and it's absolutely hilarious whenever you pull it off.
It is pretty hilarious, but at this point in age, with the addition of submarines, it's a lot tougher to get as good of Paulo Emilio matches. It's a lot harder to. Or you face a black with the radar. It is also painful that way.
Yep. It's not, even if she's not able to rush, her guns are okay. They're not the best, but her SAP rounds can do pretty good damage against other destroyers. And she get multiple exhaust smokes and speed boost, so don't be afraid to use it conventionally if there's no rushing opportunity just yet. You have to also be careful about hydro ships and radar ships. But if you can find an opening and exploit it, Paulo Emilio I mean, your match will be pretty short, but it'll be a glorious end when you get a double strike, or even the mythical triple strike.
For sure. But yep, that is going to be it. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely let us know in the comments down below. Well, this is Overlord Bo. Thank you again, SAT, for the help, and I'll talk to y'all later.